So last session I have done the basic and told about what is Angular and gave an introduction on it, and I have demonstrated about how you can set up the environment and how you can create a simple project and uh, how you can read text. Those things in last demo we have done. So this demo I will show how you can communicate in between child and parent components, and how you can call the APIs inside the Angular to get data from REST service calls. So now this application, maybe you can remember that we have created last week, actually not the exact one like this. I couldn't find the last demo application, so I have created another one. So let me now this currently in this project I have two components, landing and home component, and these are the once you click on the home component is loading, and landing one is default one. So I have added the routing here in the app routing module for those two components. So let me create another component, child component, and I will add that into the parent home component. So the new component will be considered as a child component of the home component. Let me open it. Okay. Actually, Asita asked to show how to communicate between child and parent component using an input and output method. So that's why I asked whether he's there. First, there's a command that provides by Angular to create the component. So in G generate, you can type this D, and the component you can refer from C. And let's do some calculate. I'll create it as calc. So now this is my new component. So here, if you take the component class, as I said before, there are three main things. One is import section, and other one is component decorator thing, which gives certain attributes to the component, and the other one is a class that you define. So here, this component we are referencing, we can import, or we can use this component anywhere using this selector. So if I get selector, I copy this selector here. If I go to my home, let's say in this one, now it's showing CalcWorks in the HTML. In the home component, let me add a selector here. So if I go to the home, now this CalcWorks is displaying here, because I have added that calc component as a child component in this parent, this home component. So home is considered as a parent, and the child calc is a child component now. So let's see how we can pass data from parent component to child component. Let's give some Let's use some title. You can see now. Yeah, this is in the parent component, and now I'm going to send some data from parent component to child component. For that, let's say mm, we will get some data from the first. And I will add the input text field here. And I will put an variable. NG model to bind this. And in Angular, there's a two type of data binding. One is one-way data binding, and the other one is two-way. So two-way data binding is so it will you can in both ways. Let's say if you increment the value from the component side, that value will be shown in the HTML side also. So it is binding. If you enter some data like let's say for example here I'm going to bind this new number variable into the ng model. So if you say enter any text or any value to this text field, that value is automatically assigned to the variable that I am binding here. And if I give any value to that variable from the TS side, that will display in the HTML side. So this is called two-way data binding. Other one is one-way data binding. Whatever the value you are defining in the TS side, you can display it in the HTML side with the one-way data binding. So one-way binding, what you are doing using the two curly braces. For example, now if I run this application, you will see now here. Now if I enter 10, that value is displaying in the stand because this variable is binded into the this ng model is used to do the two-way data binding, and this variable is assigned to that. So therefore, whenever you change the value from the front end, from the HTML side, that value you can get it from the TS also. Mm. So we will pass now. We will check how you can pass this value into the child class as an input. So for that, first in the child class, you should have a variable defined to get the input. For that, you can use at input, and then you can give a variable name. And then now in the select in the parents where we use the select of the child component, you can pass this variable here. Mm, let's see here. Let me put the alert in the child component and check whether the value is, you can read the value there. So now this alert is executing inside the child component. So the value I defined here in the parent class is displaying in the child class here. So let's add some buttons for the child class and see uh, how you can emit the events that is happening in the child class into the parent class, and how you can handle those emitted values from the parent class. So for that, first let's do something in the child class. I will add two buttons. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, when now these two buttons are in the child class and this text field is in the parent class, parent component. This is in the child component. So what I'm going to do is, when user click on this button, I'm going to emit that, I'm do some functionality, and I'm going to emit that result into the parent class, and this I'm going to display that result in the parent class. So first of all, so ignore about this CSS. Okay, just let me add the event. So to add the event, this is how you can add a click event or any event in the Angular. So you have to first give the event name, and then you have to give the function that you need to uh, execute when this event is happening. Let's name something, and I'll pass the value to identify which button is called. So now in the child component, I'm going to define the method and pass the action. And what I'm going to do is action add. So I'm going to increment the value here. So always when you refer into the variables, the class level variables, you have to use this keyword, and then you can refer the variable. In the method also, always you have to use this keyword here. And then I will reduce the number and now what I'm going to do now, what I want is when user click on plus, I need to increment this value. This variable is in the parent class, and when user click on the minus, I need to reduce this number. So for that, now I have to emit the event. So for that, there's a special called output, and I can give, let's say, the result, and you can initialize it. I'm going to emit the number here. We emit the play result here. So I have to import the event emitter from the Angular code. So now what I'm going to do is inside the play method, after doing the increment or decrement to the number, I will emit the event. So for that, I can use result.emit, and then I have to pass this value here. Now the child component things that we need to do for the child component is done now. So now we need to track this emit event from the parent component. So here in the parent component, we have the selector like a normal event method. Let's say we have a click method. So what we can do if we have a click, we are doing something like this one. And we are doing some function. Play or show result or something. So instead of this click event, we have to give the event emitter name, play result. The event emitter I have in the child class is play result or output variable. So I have to give that here. So this is, and I have to pass the event here. This. So result method, then I can define the value here, and then for parent class I have the variable called new number. So and I will assign the emitted value to this. So now let's see. So when you increment or when you decrement, that value, that action is executing, and it emit the result value to parent component from the child component. Any questions? You guys listening, right?
Nisansala, is it a good practice to have multiple emits in a single page?
Normally, when you emit, so if you want to emit multiple data, so you have to have an object, and then that object you can emit.
If you have multiple limits, is it a good design?
It's multiple emits means mm, 2, 3 emits
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I'm not sure, Nadisha. Is it a good practice or bad? Anyway, as per
I mean,
my
does
knowledge,
it
I think
impact to the performance of the
in my
application or
knowledge,
other?
as per my knowledge, I think we can't use multiple event emitters.
Okay.
Instead, we have to pass the emits the values in the object. As
Mhm.
per, not sure, but
If there are multiple
Zahiru,
values.
yeah. Zahiru, are you there? So,
Hello. Yes.
have you used multiple event emitters, Zahiru?
No different scenarios. If there are only one scenario, we can handle on the objects. But I didn't use multiple events in the child to parent in the single applications. Most scenarios we use something like the functions we can use the child function in the parent component. No, we can use like that. We didn't use multiple events in a single application like that.
Yeah,
Better to use objects
yeah,
in Emit.
most of the time, I mean, when we check also we how to pass the multiple values into from parent to child, they are also suggesting to use objects and pass. Actually, I haven't done that. I mean, I didn't use pass the multiple this thing and check whether it's working. Uh, we can do it right now. Shall we? Shall we? I write another one and check. Let's say instead of the this condition, I'll use play use add here. Here I will add the value and pass the child play result value here, and then reduce this. And then reduce the value, and then I will pass play result 2 into the emit, and then the child value, then experiment. When you reduce, I'll call this method, and add, I'll call this method. And then in the home component, so a result 2, I call another method. So this is what you're saying, Nadisha, right?
Yeah.
see. I think it's yes. Station. Yes. File value. This one. File value. This one. Dollar in. Since it's working. Yeah, it's working, but I'm not sure whether it's a good practice or bad practice. So I have to check that.
Okay.
Anything else? Hello. Shall I continue?
Okay, sure, Akka.
Okay. Then I will show you how you can interact with services. I mean, how you can call the APIs and how you can show data in the HTML side by calling the API. So first we will create a service class. So same as component, you can use the command np G for generate and the S for service, and then you can give the service name. So when you generate the service component in your project, so this is the basic template of the service class. So you can define this injectable uh, this provider in as root. If so, you don't need to give this or inject this or define this provider in each and every component. So if you don't have this, wherever you use this component, you have to define the provider for this component inside that provider for this service inside the component decorators within the decorators. For example, here you have to give the provider and then you have to give the give whatever the service classes you're going to use inside this component. So since here when you define like this, you don't need to specify that in any of the places. So you can use anywhere in the component. You can inject this service into the any component in the project. So use the so to use the service or the call the APIs, there's a special library that you have to not special means it's provided by Angular. You have to import the HTTP client library from from Angular commands. From Angular command slash HTTP. and then you can inject this into the service class. So HTTP client provide methods that you can call the services like get calls. It has get calls. Those methods are there that you can call them to access or create whatever the functionalities to interact with the database level. So let me create a one function, one method here. Let's say I have created the JSON and I use this mock service to return the list of JSON, list of users. Okay, so I will call this endpoint. So you can refer this here. And then it provide this method, delete it, different functionalities. And I'm calling the get here, and I will give the get call has two parameters. One is the URL and other one is optional. That object that you can define headers, params, and those things. So we'll give the URL and there are two ways you can access services. You can use observer and you can subscribe to this service method, or else you can use promise. Here I'm using observer. So if you're using observer,
And default it get observable, no?
yeah. So here it should be written, and then now the service implementation is done for the get call. So now this will return this will access this endpoint and return the JSON in JSON. So now from the component, now I'm going to create a new component and I'll display this data inside that component. For that, let me generate the component. Sorry, I'm having cold. So component, and let's say user list. This has generated the new component. Now I am going to add a new routing for this in the app component HTML. I think you remember it. We have done this in last demo. So you can define the routing here. So I will say users and then do the name here. And then I have to define the route. Now this is how you call the routing. And here in the app routing TS, you need to define. So when we add the add new component, so if you want to use any component, that component should be defined inside the declare inside this app module TS. So here now when we execute that command Angular, it will automatically enter these entries into the app module TS. So this is my user list component and it is declared inside the ng modules in app module TS. Now if I get this and The routing, I will add a new routing for the class, for the new component. So I gave the new users, and then the component is list component. Now user list component HTML has default text user list works for you to check whether everything is working fine. So if I go and check this, now I have a new menu, users, and when I click on, it shows the text that is in the component HTML, user list component HTML. And now I'm going to let me access those values from the or let me call this service inside this user list component. So for that, what I need to do is I need to inject that service into this component. So how I'm going to inject? I can just inject it in the constructor. Let's say this is service. And then I have to give the service name. It's my app service name. Service. And it will automatically import the my app service into this component, and it will inject the service into the component. So now I can access the service method here. Let me access let me have the method with all users. So I can refer this my app service, and then I can call the get all user method. So since I'm using observer, I have to subscribe to this method. So I can subscribe and I can get the response. Let's say now here inside this within these brackets, you can write whatever the thing you need to do after you calling this function. So what I need to do now, I need to access this data, and I need to since this is a JSON array, I need to put that into the array, and I need to iterate it in the HTML side. So first I will define array here. So my users or something, and I will dash a. So my users. Oops. Users. This is how you can define an array. Here, since this is returning an object, I'm assigning this as any. Normally, what we are doing is we are creating a domain class. So let's say this to get this person domain, we are defining a domain class, and we are giving the type on type as that domain class name as a type here. So then it will map whatever the response into the domain class that we are using here. So right now I'm not going to define any classes. I just use any here. So you can assign any values, any objects to this array. And then I will here use this dot my users equal response dot. I'll say here in my JSON array, it has a key, person, and that with values for that key is the array, list of users. So I'm going to access this array using the key. Now all the values should be in this, should assign into this array. So now I'm going to iterate this inside the HTML file. So what I can use is I will use some default CSS that I used. Actually, with that CSS, so I will just copy paste this one. In this part, I put a video. And inside this div, I'm going to iterate my array. So there are directives used in Angular. I think in the first first demo that we talked about it. So you can use ng4, one of the directive provided by the Angular. So this is how it used. So you can use star and then ng4, and then you can define a variable to access the value one element of the array, and here you can give the array name. So my array name is my users. And now I will print the name and the value, name and first name and the last name of the user. So I use here. So, and then this is how you can access the value. So now this one has a one element of the array, so you can use that. This is actually object array, so user, and this one object has a different attribute, first name, last name, and title. So I will access the first name and last name. So user dot name. First name. So let's see what happens in the app.
There is error div close in the wow. Need to close out of the second div. ng4 div should be closed.
Sorry. Let's see. So one thing that you can do, you can debug your program. So for debug, in the web browser, you have the source tab here. And here, let me debug my one. So if you click on the source, you can see webpack. And here there's a folder with dot. Inside this, all your source code is available. This is available only in the local environment. Once you create a bundle and deploy it in the production or somewhere, you cannot access the code. You can't access code like this. So my component is now user list component. It's already there. Let me debug this and check what's the issue. Network tab. Sorry, I didn't call this function actually. So I have defined this get all users. So I need to call this when page is loading. So for that, there are lifecycle methods provided by Angular. So one method is ng on init. Like this, you have ng on destroy, after view, different, I think 5 or 6 lifecycle methods are there. So on init means it's all every time you load the application, load the component, this onInit method is executing. So I have to call this method inside the onInit in order to execute this get all users method. So this is how I can call it. Now let's see. Now it executed. Some errors. Yeah. Get all users is not a function. Now it says get all users. Get all users. Users, observable, data display, outclass access, that's correct, and this users, let's see, then we can identify the users, and then access, data users, subscribe, subscribe, correct. All users is equal function. So undefined.
Method name should be changed. Get all use. Service should be imported in the app module, I think.
Yeah.
Service
App
need to import,
It's imported, right? HTTP client module.
but need to import. Service
service.
need to provide.
Here? No.
Not need, but we already added in the root.
Yeah, it's added in
In the root level, no. So what's the get all users private HTTP client?
users. All should be observable. Okay, this is the client. The client, my service, my service. Double/slash meeting අදට ගියා ඊට පස්සේ මෙතන තියෙනවා ඒකත් හරි. So we restart this and check there's error. Property SMS component.
Yep, sorry.
I think I have to restart this. Now that should be okay. That's it. Okay, now it is okay. Now the array is reading and then values are printing. Let me do some styling here. User list. I might put float here. Remove these breakpoints. Do some margins. Line the text. So this is how you can hold the API REST call inside the Angular and access the data. So likewise, here like a get method, you can use post. So if you give post, here you have to give the value you need to pass. It could be empty, or else you have to pass the payload here. If it is a post code, delete, put, all the methods are there. So that's all for today. Infection. These are basic. Actually, I think all the new team might know everything.
Okay, anyone have any questions? Okay then thank you Nisan Saraka for your effort.
Okay.